So I've been with Pavement Recycling System for 27 years. I'm a field guy. I'm an application guy. What I bring to you is someone you can turn to look at projects. I do a lot of pavement evaluations and make sure we can build it. You know, you can put a project together in a vacuum of an office, but you know, if you can't construct it in the field, it really doesn't do you any good. So I titled it Innovations with Recycled Asphalt Pavement. You know, you could call it really awesome products if you'd like. So let's get started. What we know is asphalt has always been recyclable. Next to recycled water is the #1 recycled product in the world, and asphalt's #2. On an average in the United States, 600, 700 million tons are recycled a year, and a lot of that goes back into hot mix, warm mix, in-place methods. But what we're going to talk about today is how can we expand on that. We all know we can put wrap into the hot mix, and we all know how to utilize that. So I brought this picture. Doug Ford, the past president of the International Slurry Seal Association, went up in a plane and shot some photos. And this is what it's like in California. This is an actual pit in the city of Irwindale, and you can see the houses are, this is not photoshopped. These are houses that butt right up to a working facility, and you can actually see that we're in dire needs for good aggregate source. You would think there'd be plenty, but you know, with the concentration of plants and ready mix plants, you can see a Cemex ready mix plant down there in the lower corner. So what we're going to talk about is, you know, how effective recycled asphalt really is. We know it's very cost effective, especially with shrinking budgets. I know most of you are battling budget issues. I know in California I work with 150 agencies, and they all need to figure out a way to stretch their budget. So we know that there's going to be fewer asphalt overlays, and they're doing a lot more preservation. It's now being used in Southern California quite a bit in preservation, and today we're going to talk about that. We also know it's high quality. You know, when I was a little boy, the hot plants were putting out asphalt for, what, $15 a ton? You know, that was the byproduct. The operator at the plant would open a valve. You know, they didn't have mass flow meters. They just put in 6-7%. You got all the good stuff. Got the light oils, flexible oils. So we know the aggregate and the binders are very superior in asphalt. That's why those roads lasted 40, 50 years. I'm sure all you hear are looking at asphalt roads that are starting to oxidize within 10 years. Also, from a preservation perspective, the rock is neutral. It's not been freshly crushed. There's no charge to this rock. So it works very well with emulsions. And it's a black rock. In fact, Mo, I brought a baggie of wrap chips, and that glass there, if you pass it around. A little story on those wrap chips. I've been traveling. I went to Era, Niagara Falls, and I went through quite a few airports. Every time I went through an airport, they searched my luggage to find out what that baggie of black stuff was. So I'm letting you look at it so you can hold it. But look at the particles. They're really cubical, good aggregate in there. And then the asphalt binders. So these are typical uses. I mean, in Montana, if you have a pile of wrap, how do you use it? Do you use it for shoulder backing? Do you use it for base? Do you put it on haul roads? Do you try to use it for dust control? Maybe use it for in your crushed miscellaneous base. But is this really the best way to utilize that very valuable asphalt? So these are some of the products we're going to talk about today. Obviously, recycling in place is a very valuable tool to recycle that wrap. Recycling with cold central plant recycling. It's basically milling and filling with your existing asphalt investments. You mill it, you take it to a stockpile site, you process it and pave it back. Terminal blend or hot applied chip seals. We do a lot of hot rubber applied chip seals in California, but they're very pricey because they require the contractor to purchase heated chips that have 1% of asphalt coated on it. Now when you shut down a hot plant to coat 3/8 or 1/2 inch chip, they're going to charge you about the same price for hot mix. So we've been experimenting with ambient chip wrap with hot applied binders with great success, and the price is about a quarter of the price. And then the wrap aggregates, the chip seals, scrub seals, slurry seals, wrap microsurfacing, and then we actually use it in crack fill, for crack fill material because it's a black aggregate. But to have good wrap products, you have to have good wrap management. You know, if you have trucks coming in from different jobs, you just can't put a contaminated load on your clean pile of wrap. So in California, we also promote and we help agencies set up their wrap management program. I like to use the word wrap bank. You know, you weigh it in and you get 10,000 tons, and then you put together a project and you can pull material right out of those stockpile sites. Typical uses, there's different types of management. Some agencies like Caltrans do their own wrap management and do their own in-house projects. Some are on site, some are contracted out. Agencies will put out an RFP for a contractor to handle the stockpile management, the crushing, the fractionation, the import, the export, and the agencies use those products. And then we'll go over a little bit of the best practices. So one of the most valuable ways to recycle your reclaimed asphalt pavement is with cold central plant recycling. You take a clean pile of wrap, you do a mix design with an AASHTO approved lab, and you can start making a cold mix product that you can pave with for normally about $30 a ton, based on, and that's in a pile. And then you add to that your trucking costs, usually about $10 a ton for installation, but you can usually get it done. And you try to set up projects as close to the source as possible. Basically, you're crushing and mixing it to the specific gradation. You're going to either add a foamed asphalt or an engineered emulsion, whatever the mix design. It's transported, it's laid down, just like hot mix. I like to call it an urban quarry. So in Southern California, we have a lower desert. You may have heard of Palm Springs, Rancho Mirage, La Quinta. These areas are high-end neighborhoods, and they love to recycle. I mean, they can afford to do anything they want, but they've been doing a lot of recycling. In fact, Palm Desert has recycled over 5 million square feet, 3 million square feet with cold central plant recycling. So this is a picture of one of the smaller Air Resource Board compliant portable plants that you can set up. You need a minimum of about a half an acre, just so you have room for the stockpile. But you can actually take and mill and fill in a little residential neighborhood and bring it to the centrally located plant site and then pave those neighborhoods back. That's one of the most valuable ways you can utilize your wrap pile. So we mill it, you stockpile it, and then there's a value of the wrap. And it may vary geographically. In Southern California, we put a value of $15 to $25 per ton just for the wrap in a pile. That's before it's crushed, screened, and fractionated. $10 to $15 for the aggregate. The aggregate is superior, it's good aggregate, you can reuse it. The remainder is made up in that valuable binder, by being able to reuse that binder. In fact, in Southern California, there's probably 30 hot plants within 20 miles of each other. But there's so many roads and so much business. Every hot plant will pay for your trucking to get that wrap. That's how valuable that wrap is to them. They'll pay for all your trucking costs. What I do is I go into agencies and I get them to keep their asphalt. I'm not a big fan of all the hot plant guys in Southern California, but that's too bad. That's the way it is. The future is recycling and preservation, and the more agencies realize that their investment, their valuable asphalt investment, can be used back in their own projects, the better it is. So once you take it to a processing center, you just crush it and screen it. It's an ideal situation. The trucks come from the milling operation and dump the wrap in the stockpile. It runs through the plant, that truck just pulls over, gets lined up, gets loaded with the material from the plant, goes to the paver. From the paver back to the milling operation, and so on. So you can run 8 trucks locally and keep up with the milling and the paving operation at about 250 tons per hour. So those trucks are never running empty. So it's a very efficient process. A couple projects, City of Menifee, Newport Road. This is 30,000 vehicles a day. So the project was split into 2 mobilizations. You can see the portable plant. They did a 10-inch cement treatment prior to installing the 3 inches of the cold mix on top, and then it received a 2-inch asphalt rubber overlay. This is a shopping mall in Modesto, Central California, 800,000 square feet. That's 100% recycled asphalt. We had to do it in 4 phases to keep the parking lot open, and this received 1.5 inches of conventional hot mix asphalt. This is an auto auction, 1 million square feet. In Southern California, they stripped the asphalt, they went out and stabilized the subgrade, and you can see they're paving it back about 5 inches loose for about a 3.5 to 4 inch compacted, and then they ended up putting 2 coats of a slurry seal on top and striped it. And this is a high-end. Mannheim sells nothing but high-end vehicles, Porsches, BMWs, so their customers were expecting a smooth, clean surface to walk around and look at cars. But the contractor was able to make asphalt on site for $32 a ton, and it eliminated exporting and importing off of the compound. So here's what I brought in my little baggie that seemed to get me in trouble. These are wrap chips. Most of them are made up in single stones. I noticed, you can see there's not a lot of conglomerates on it, but every once in a while you'll get some stones with a little asphalt on it. Otherwise, it still has to meet the same strict gradation requirements. In Southern California, we use what we call a green book. This gradation here is based on the Caltrans testing determined by CT 362. But you can see they like a 5/16 chip, but we also make a 3/8 chip as well throughout the state. For some reason, they find that the smaller chip tends to have less velocity if it gets loose. I mean, anything to reduce a windshield claim, but I think it locks in together much nicer. That's a 5/16 chip I brought. And it looks really, really good when it goes down. I'll show you some pictures. In bonding, this is a pre-coated chip. There is no -200 clay particles on this. Everything is coated with an asphalt dust. So this is a picture we took out in the field after it was rolled, before it was swept, and you can see the bonding very well. Again, we can use this with 3/8 or 5/16, but it works really good. So I wanted to show you a close-up of a terminal blend. So this is a product that they make at the terminal. They blend the asphalt rubber. It's delivered hot. They don't have to mix the rubber out in the field. They spread it at a lower temperature to avoid the use of the scrubber because it has a reduced smoke. So they're shooting this about 330 degrees, and then they drop the dry wrap chip immediately behind it. And you can see how tight and close. They actually came back and did a fog seal on this just to lock the surface, but a lot of times with the black aggregate, many agencies elect just to put a cape seal, or in a low volume road out in the desert, they'll just leave it. They're going to come back in 4 years and seal it with the type 2. Polymer modified Rejuvenate emulsions works very well. Again, it's a pre-coated chip. A lot of projects in California are either hot applied, but majority of the projects are PMRE. So this is a 5/16 chip going down in an upper desert roadway, extreme conditions. So let's talk about how long we've been experimenting with the products. This project went down for San Bernardino County in 2006. They only did half the road, which actually worked out pretty good because it's a really good proof of why preservation works. So here's a picture of it going down. That's the finished surface. They did not fog seal this road. This was just a demonstration project. So 9 years later, look at the delineation on the chip seal versus the older asphalt, and this is how it looks in 2015. It's held up very well. It's stayed fairly dark considering the environment. This is a portion of Southern Cal that'll get 110-degree days, and in the winter, 30-degree nights. So we get a lot of thermal swings. So here's an LA County project in 2009. This is a polymer modified rejuvenating emulsion. I believe this was a past product. And this was another demo project, and they picked this project. It was right in front of the maintenance yard. Now you can tell by the cracks there, this is probably beyond a chip seal. It's a little more, aggravated cracking. You probably should have went out and did some patching. But this is what we got, and this is what they picked. Because of the cracks, you can see some of the voids. We had to come back with shovels, with the wrap, and we actually took the material, the wrap, and filled all those voids before the rolling operation. We didn't know how it would turn out, but we figured we better fill it up versus having a void there later. So as projects go, and it doesn't rain in California, it rained on this polymer modified rejuvenated emulsions scrub seal about 4 hours after we had swept it. So there's a picture of it slightly damp, but makes the stripe look really nice. And this is what it looks like 6 years later. The cracks, you can see them, but they're completely sealed with that highly polymer emulsion. The aggregate flexes with it, and the product actually looks pretty good for being as old as it is. So again, I wouldn't have used it on this project. I would have probably done some dig outs or probably went with a different preservation tool, but this was the project they picked. So what's really picking up momentum is wrap slurry and wrap microsurfacing. There's a huge benefit to using the product beside it being a black aggregate, but here's a conventional equipment putting down a wrap slurry in a residential neighborhood. The slurry aggregate itself, that this is type 2, is very consistent, with the screening process. Very few conglomerations, but a very high asphalt content. This is the good stuff that the hot plants want. They'll scalp and they'll actually blow in the fines because the fines have the higher percentage of the binder. This happens to be a type 2 scalping. This is what it looks like in a pile. So you're starting with a black aggregate that's recycled, and per mix design, you're adding less emulsion. The ISSA type 2 on the right shows emulsion content at 12 to 18%. With wrap aggregate, you're able to back off that emulsion. We usually run about 12% emulsion. Because of the higher binder content, you can back way off on the emulsion. You end up with a higher residual content. Every project, the specs call for a rubber tire roller to roll the wrap or the micro right before the end of the shift. And when we have improved, we have less aggregate loss, we have an improved smoother surface. But what really happens, about 6 months later, once it's a summertime or you get a little bit of temperature on there and traffic's on it, it just shines up almost like a brand new asphalt surface. And that's mainly because of the higher binder content. So again, conventional equipment equals super results. There's no special equipment. The calibration is slightly different because you're going to be running less emulsion. So the gate's going to be up. You're running a little more aggregate. But the color and the smoothness and the material is excellent. So in Socal, we use 2.5% polymer in our conventional slurries. It's just the standard. The wrap slurry calls out for 3% polymer and a rubber tire roller. That's the only difference other than the aggregate. On the left-hand side is a slurry that's been down for 1 year, and on the right-hand side is a conventional that's been down for 1 year. The conventional, due to weather and oxidation and watering, is starting to fade just a little quicker and everyone wants their product to stay blacker a little longer. I mean, it's going to oxidize, but you're going to pick up a little time because of the darker aggregate. So, worst first. Many agencies are still trying to keep up with the worst first approach. We all know that there's no way to catch up. So LA County in the last 5 years, starting in 2009, went to a sustainable approach. They call it a three-pronged approach. That three-pronged approach is take care of your good roads first with pavement preservation. Utilize recycled products in your preservation tools. That's wrap chips, wrap slurry, wrap micros. And utilize in-place methods. Instead of 3-inch mill and fill, they do recycling. It's either cold in place or it's going to be cold central plant. And for the roads that need reconstruction, they strip the asphalt, save it, and they do soil stabilization, be it cement, lime, foam, fly ash. But here's what they were able to do. In 5 years, going from a worst first to a three-pronged sustainable approach, their square footage of coverage went up 1 million square feet. The roads rated good to excellent went up 25%. Their roads rated poor and failed decreased by 20%. And their overall network PCI went up to a 71. There's only a handful of agencies I work with in California that are actually able to increase their PCI. And a lot of those are newer agencies that have new roads, and their PCI number is high to begin with. But this is a good example of utilizing preservation makes up their biggest tool in their tool bag. And this is the big results they had. I didn't put the other slide in here, but over $25 million has been saved in the last 5 years by utilizing the three-pronged approach. And they plan to continue utilizing that. So let's talk a little bit about wrap management. The use of wrap and materials in conventional bids, specifications are available. If you need a sample spec or anything, we can get you those specs. There's specs for wrap slurry, wrap chips, wrap micro, terminal blends. They're out there. Utilization of in-house wrap, on-site methods. So you can take an existing pile, which many of you may have, and you can utilize the products in preservation and recycling. So one of the options is crush and screen on site. The agency can put out an RFP to get a qualified contractor. They can either do it by time or quantity. So the RFP is bid. There's a separate mob cost, a crushing cost, a screening cost based on the product, or you could set it up for contracted by quantity. Again, we make some notes, small quantities can be expensive. So that's usually done twice a year because they do their chipping early in the season and late in the season. So they'll come in and they'll run 10, 15,000 tons for the spring, and they'll come back and run their fall quantities. The nice thing is once you make the type, you can scalp off the type 2 while you're making the chips. So you can make two products simultaneously. So Caltrans has come up with their maintenance program allows a local maintenance superintendent to do all of his projects in-house. They don't have to go out to bid. He has a credit card. He can spend $400,000 on each maintenance job. And what he can do, he can chain these together. So they have figured out, they have piles of wrap scattered throughout their district. What they'll do is they'll put out the RFP for to come out and fractionate the pile. And then with their in-house crews, they'll do their own chip sealing, crack sealing, traffic control. They may use some of the overburden for shoulder backing, but they don't do their own slurry and micro, so they'll contract out that per ton. And this particular project, this was out by Desert Center. This is between Phoenix and Indio, California. It's about 150 miles from the nearest source. So by utilizing 4 different piles within 50 miles, they were able to do chip seals throughout their district. At one point, it was costing them $38 a ton just to ship the material out to their projects. And what they learned from it, they get the same product with little or no additional cost. So here's a small little setup here, they're actually fractionating 3 different products out of one pile. Here's a close-up of the wrap chip and the slurry that they're going to do cape seals with, and making 2 products at one time. You're going to have a little different yield. So let's take 1,000 tons. If you're going to make a 3/8 chip, you may generate 300 to 400 tons of chip, but you're going to generate almost 500 tons of the type 2. So you want to build that into your plan. You want to do enough cape seals to cover your chip seals if you're going to make the 2 products, which is what they do. They love doing ramps. So these are on and off ramps off the I-10. So they're first going to do a scrub seal. They're putting a wrap chip down, and then they're going to come back and put the type 2 slurry over it. So complete management program allows the agency to pay one contractor, and this goes out to bid, to handle the import, the stockpile management, the crushing, the screening, the fractionation, the actual export. But what these agencies are doing is they're building their projects with that material. They're designing projects to utilize their own wrap products in their future projects. And most of these projects are preservation. On a larger scale, there's 3 of these throughout Southern California that manufactures large amounts of wrap aggregate. That way, any agency can specify these products and any contractor can install it. It's just like purchasing their aggregate from a gravel pit or a source. This is just showing you a larger scale operation making multiple products at one time. A close-up of the 5/16 chip, which looks pretty darn good. I think you got to see that close up. So best practices: clean wrap for your slurry. It's imperative that at the facility, the trucks are screened, they're inspected. Anything that has contamination like class 2 base or dirt or fabric or petromat gets segregated. Only the clean, pure wrap is put in one pile, and that is what they use. That's what their mix design is for. So it's real important to take care of the incoming. They do sand equivalents, utilization of multiple projects. Make sure you design a job to accommodate how much slurry you're going to make based on how much chips you're going to make. For the chips, we always do 2 screenings. We run them through one time. We run them through the second time and scalp off the number 4 product. We just want to get as much of the fines out. We try to create a more singular size aggregate. If you notice, those are pretty consistent in size. We've had really good luck with that. Moisture content, we always send out the moist chips for polymer modified or any of the emulsion projects. And dry, it has to be completely dry for any of the hot binder projects. One thing to note, and this is primarily in Socal or Central Cal, we get really hot days, so when you manufacture the slurry aggregate, you can't really put it in a pile for much longer than 2 or 3 weeks, or just the weight of that pile and heat will cause it to, bind up again. You have to run it through a screen. So normally these are made to order. They'll make this 2 or 3 days. Plus the moisture, you can control the moisture content and the trucks can come in and pick it up. So to wrap things up, finished environmentally friendly products. And what I do is stretch dollars for agencies. So there's my contact information. If there's any questions on anything that has to do with recycling or reclaimed asphalt pavement, I think I picked up a little time and got us back on track.
We've got time for a couple of questions if anybody has any.
Jim, does the crack sealants that are used influence the wrap pile at all?
It's a really good question. Again, the milling operation is going to handle a lot of the crack fill, but it's going to end up in the truck. As long as the product is clean, when it goes in the stockpile, all of that has to go through a primary scalping screen. All of the fabric, if it slips through, or any of the crack fill, and we try to get as much as a loop wire out before it actually enters the crushing and fractionation portion of it. But yeah, we have a lot of crack fill, and that all gets scalped out before the process. Good question. Anybody want to know how much it costs? I mean, how much you paying for chips locally? 20 bucks a ton? 30 bucks a ton? Okay. If it's your own pile, and you could pay to crush and screen it, you could probably do it for 10 bucks a ton. And then if you have your own trucks, if they're sitting there anyway, it's getting charged, you can use your own equipment, but it depends on where the pile is, because then you have to deal with trucking costs. But if I leave you with anything, that valuable asphalt investment that has legacy binders and some of the best aggregates in the world is a great tool that you can utilize in your future projects. So thank you very much for letting me come here again, and hope to come back soon.
Thank you, Jim.